I never thought a snowstorm would be the thing that turned my college experience from meh to memorable, but hey, here we are. 1 minute I was just trudging across campus, headphones in, ready to get through the last lecture of the day, and the next, I'm stranded in the library with exactly one other person left on campus. No cars, no crowds, just us and a blizzard doing its thing outside. So let me set the scene for you. It was that kind of late November afternoon when the sky's already gray at noon and the wind has this sharp bite that makes you zip up your jacket twice. The forecast had warned about some snow, but nobody really expected it to be anything major. Typical. I was halfway through writing a paper when the storm started picking up, and people began packing up and leaving like they were heading for safety. I figured I had time to finish my work, so I stayed behind, thinking a quiet library would be perfect for focusing. I was wrong. Within an hour, the campus was a ghost town. The wind howled through the empty quad, and outside, the snow was piling up fast, covering every bench, every path, every signpost. The dean sent out an email saying classes were canceled for the rest of the day and basically ordered everyone to get off campus if they could. Of course, I wasn't going anywhere, not with half my notes spread across my desk and my laptop battery barely hanging on. That's when I noticed him. He was sitting about 10 feet away, near the big window facing the quad, staring out at the snow like he was waiting for some miracle to break the storm. I'd seen him around campus before. Jake. He's that guy who always seems calm, even when everything around him's chaos. Tall, with messy dark hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it more times than he could count, and these intense green eyes that caught the light in the library's dimness. I always thought he looked like he belonged in a music video or something. We'd never really talked, just the occasional nod or awkward smile when our paths crossed. But now, with the place empty and the storm making the whole world feel like it had shrunk down to just this library, it felt different. Like maybe the universe was nudging us to actually say something. So I swallowed my nerves, packed up my stuff, and walked over. "Looks like we're the only two left," I said, trying to keep my voice casual, but I bet it sounded a little too hopeful. Jake looked up, surprised, then cracked a smile that was somehow both shy and inviting. "Yeah, feels like the end of the world or something. Or the start of something," I joked, feeling a little ridiculous but also kind of excited. He laughed, and just like that, the silence between us started to fill up with something warmer than the cold air seeping under the door. Honestly, I had no idea that night was about to change everything. He motioned toward the empty seats around us like he was inviting me to sit down, which I did without hesitation, even though, honestly, I wasn't sure what the hell I was doing. There was something about being stuck in this weird, frozen bubble with Jake that made the usual awkwardness between strangers feel miles away. "So, what are you working on?" he asked, nodding toward my laptop. I closed it halfway, deciding to give the paper a break. "If we're gonna be snowed in together, might as well actually talk," I laughed. "Final paper for sociology. It's about urban communities and how people connect, or don't, in big cities. Ironically, it's kind of about isolation, which feels appropriate now." Jake raised his eyebrows. "Deep stuff. I'm just here trying to finish a playlist for the winter concert. I play guitar in a band, so I guess I'm officially a cliché music guy." "Hey, no shame in that," I said, leaning back. "What kind of music do you guys play?" He shrugged, smiling like he didn't really want to brag but was secretly proud. "Mostly indie rock. A little folk. We cover some classics too. Nothing big yet, just local gigs." I nodded, imagining him on stage, guitar in hand, maybe getting a little lost in the music. It wasn't hard to picture. There was something about the way he talked, calm but passionate, that felt genuine. We fell into this easy rhythm, swapping favorite bands, sharing bad concert stories, and somehow, slowly, the library felt less like a frozen fortress and more like a safe haven. After a while, Jake glanced at the clock. "Looks like the storm's not letting up anytime soon. You sure you can't just crash here for the night? The dorms are probably locked down." I hesitated. Honestly, the idea of being alone in my tiny dorm while the snow raged outside was already creeping into my head like a bad thriller. But crashing with someone? That was new territory. "I don't want to be a bother," I said quietly. He shook his head, eyes steady. "You're not. Trust me, it's way better than trying to dig your way out in a blizzard." I smiled, the tension easing a bit. "All right, deal. But only if you promise I'm not going to be stuck listening to your endless playlists all night." He laughed, the sound warm and real. "Fine, deal. But I get to pick the first song." Somehow, the hours slipped by like minutes. We moved around the library, grabbing snacks from the vending machines, building a sort of makeshift camp with jackets and blankets we found in the common area. The storm outside turned the world into a quiet white void, but inside, I was starting to feel something I hadn't in a long time. Connection. At one point, Jake pulled out his phone and showed me a video of his band playing at a local cafe. Watching him light up when he talked about the music, the way his fingers moved, as if he was still strumming the guitar, I realized I hadn't been looking at him the same way all night. It wasn't just that he was easy to talk to, it was that there was this spark, this vulnerability wrapped up in the casual confidence. When the power flickered for a second and then went out completely, we just laughed like it was the most natural thing in the world. No screens, no distractions, just the sound of the wind and the quiet hum of two guys stuck in the same frozen campus. Jake pulled out a flashlight from his backpack and clicked it on, shining it around until his eyes met mine in the dim beam. "So, if we're stuck here, what should we do?" "We can't really study in the dark," I shrugged, suddenly aware of how close he was sitting. "I don't know. Talk? Tell stories? Or maybe try to scare each other?" He grinned, a little mischievous. "All right, I'll start. You're brave enough to be stuck with me in a blizzard, so you can handle a story. We swap tales about our worst dates, our weirdest moments on campus, and the stupid things we'd done to impress people. Somewhere in between, the tension morphed into something softer, more tentative, like the space between us was shrinking, but in a good way. At one point, Jake made this joke about how snowstorms were nature's way of forcing people to slow down, to really see each other. It sounded corny when he said it, but I couldn't help but agree. Maybe, I thought, this was exactly what I needed. Eventually, we found ourselves sitting closer, the flashlight's glow painting shadows on the walls. I caught myself stealing glances at him, at the curve of his mouth when he smiled, the way his hair fell across his forehead. It was ridiculous how quickly my heart started racing over something as simple as eye contact. I wondered if he felt it too. The storm outside was relentless, but inside, the library had become this warm, quiet world where nothing else existed but the sound of our voices and the unspoken electricity between two people who just found themselves in the middle of something unexpected. And just before I could talk myself out of it, Jake leaned in slightly, and I could swear the world held its breath. Time seemed to slow down in that dim circle of flashlight glow. I could feel the heat radiating off his face, and the subtle way his eyes flickered between mine and just beyond, like he was searching for the right words or the right moment. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. "Hey," he whispered, his voice low and a little shaky. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my cool but failing spectacularly. "Hey." He stayed close, close enough to feel the brush of his breath. The storm outside was this muffled roar, but in here, everything was sharp and intense. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words tangled up in my throat like a knot. Then he did the thing that made me laugh, breaking the tension. He reached out and poked me lightly on the arm. "You're pretty quiet all of a sudden. Snowstorm got you speechless?" "Maybe," I admitted, grinning despite myself. "Or maybe I'm just scared you're about to confess you're secretly a prince or something." Jake rolled his eyes, but the smile tugging at his mouth was real. "No royal titles here. Just a guy stuck in the library with a dumb flashlight and no escape plan." "Well, I guess we're royalty of the snowed in then," I joked, shifting a little closer. That was when he finally laughed full out. The kind of laugh that's genuine and makes your chest feel lighter. And just like that, the last bit of awkwardness between us melted away. We spent the next hour talking about everything and nothing. I learned that Jake's parents were from a small town a few hours away, and music was his escape, his way of making sense of the chaos of life. I told him about my messy family, and how this whole college thing felt like walking a tightrope without a net. At one point, the power came back, and the harsh fluorescent lights flickered on, but neither of us moved. Somehow the half-lit world felt less cozy, less hours. So Jake killed the lights again, and we went back to the flashlight halo we'd made. You know, he said quietly, I don't think I've ever just talked like this with someone I barely know. It feels weirdly nice. Yeah, I agreed. Like, sometimes you think you have to be friends with everyone, but maybe you just need to be friends with the right person. He nodded, looking at me with those green eyes that suddenly seemed softer, more thoughtful. Then, out of nowhere, a sharp crack echoed through the library, a branch snapping under the weight of snow outside, and we both jumped, laughing nervously. Okay, that was creepy, Jake admitted, shining the flashlight toward the window. Snowstorm plus weird noises equals horror movie vibes. I agreed, feeling that old nervous excitement bubbling up again. Promise it's not too scary. I nodded, leaning forward. Jake took a deep breath and began telling me about the time he tried to impress a crush by learning how to skateboard. Long story short. It ended with him crashing into a trash can and being rescued by a very amused group of friends. I laughed so hard I nearly fell off my chair. You're way braver than me. I probably would have just walked away. Yeah, well, stupidity and bravery are pretty close cousins, he said, grinning. We talked until the storm finally started to ease, the snowflakes outside slowing to a gentle fall, turning the world into something quiet and soft. Eventually, the first few brave students began showing up, their boots crunching through the snow and their breaths visible in the cold morning air. Jake and I packed up our makeshift camp, the warmth and connection lingering like a secret between us. Walking out of the library together, the campus looked different, fresh, new, like a blank page waiting to be written on. Before we parted ways, he turned to me and said, Hey, maybe next time we get snowed in, we don't wait for a blizzard to actually talk. I smiled, feeling a lightness I hadn't felt in months. Yeah, next time, maybe we just grab coffee instead of getting trapped by nature. He laughed, that easy, genuine laugh again. It's a date. And just like that, what started as a night stuck inside a snowstorm turned into the beginning of something I wasn't ready to name yet, but definitely wasn't ready to let go of either. After that night, everything felt a little different, like the snowstorm had cracked open some hidden door, and suddenly, the campus wasn't just a place I passed through, but a space full of possibilities. The cold air was still crisp as we walked out, the flakes settling lightly on our jackets, but there was this warmth between us, something unsaid but undeniable. We didn't say much as we parted ways near the dorms, just exchanged numbers with a quick handshake that lingered a little too long to be casual. As I watched him disappear inside, I realized I hadn't been that nervous or tongue-tied since, well, ever. The next few days were a blur of classes and papers, but I kept replaying that night in my head. I wondered if Jake was thinking about it too, or if it was just me holding on to this strange, hopeful feeling. I found myself texting him more, mostly dumb jokes or music recommendations, but those messages were the highlight of my days. One evening, a few days after the storm, he invited me to watch his band rehearse in the practice room beneath the student union. I was nervous, obviously. Not exactly the let's hang out vibe I was used to with friends, but it felt like a step forward, a chance to see him in his element. The moment I walked in, Jake's face lit up when he saw me. Glad you made it, he said, handing me a pair of headphones. I settled into a chair near the back, watching as the guys tuned their instruments. When the music started, something shifted. I could see the passion and focus in Jake's fingers as he played, the way he closed his eyes at some parts, lost in the melody. It was like the music was another side of him I hadn't seen before, raw and real. After the session ended, we grabbed some coffee at a nearby cafe, the autumn chill still lingering, but the air warmed by the little shop's cozy glow. We talked about everything from music to plans after graduation, and for once I felt like I could be completely myself without worrying about the usual masks or awkward silences. At some point, the conversation dipped into more personal territory. Jake confessed that he'd struggled with feeling out of place, like music was his way of carving out a space where he belonged. I shared my own doubts, the pressure of expectations, the fear of not fitting in anywhere. It felt like we were stitching together the invisible threads that had been pulling us closer since that snowed-in night. As the evening wore on, I noticed how the dim light caught the slight flush on his cheeks when he laughed, the way his eyes searched mine when he was about to say something but hesitated. At one point, our hands brushed while reaching for the same coffee cup, and the electricity was unmistakable. I don't think either of us knew what exactly was happening, but we both felt it. A shift from friendship to something more fragile, more exciting. Weeks passed, and our connection deepened. We studied together, shared meals, and spent quiet afternoons in the library where it had all started. There were moments of nervous glances and tentative touches, and every time, my heart did this stupid little flip that no amount of logic could explain. One chilly evening, Jake invited me to a small gig at a local bar. His band was playing, and I could tell he was nervous, which made me nervous too. The crowd was small but lively, and when Jake took the stage, he looked like he belonged there in a way that made my chest tighten. After their set, he pulled me aside, eyes shining. "Thanks for coming. It means a lot." "Wouldn't miss it," I said, my voice a little shaky. Then, out of nowhere, he stepped closer, his hand brushing mine. "Can I kiss you?" My brain short-circuited, but my heart knew the answer before I could even think. "Yeah," I whispered. The kiss was soft and tentative at first, like testing the waters, but then it deepened, filled with all the words we hadn't said. When we finally pulled apart, the world felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. From that moment on, things weren't the same. We became something more than friends. Partners navigating the awkward, thrilling, terrifying space of new love. It wasn't always perfect. There were misunderstandings and doubts. But every time I looked at Jake, I knew I'd found someone worth the risk. The snowstorm that trapped us on campus had been the start of a story I never saw coming. A story about finding connection when you least expect it. About two people who were just trying to stay warm in the cold, but ended up warming each other's hearts instead. And honestly, I wouldn't change a single thing. Things between Jake and me settled into this weird but wonderful routine, the kind you only get when you're still navigating what us really means. It wasn't all butterflies and smooth sailing, more like two people fumbling around, sometimes stepping on each other's toes, but always trying to figure it out together. One Saturday afternoon, we decided to take a break from the usual library grind and hit up this tiny secondhand bookstore downtown. Jake had mentioned before that he loved old novels and obscure poetry, and honestly, I was curious to see what that looked like. The place was a cozy mess. Books stacked in every corner, that unmistakable smell of paper and dust hanging in the air. I swear, it felt like stepping into another world. Jake immediately vanished into the back aisles, and I followed, scanning the shelves, pretending to know what I was looking for but really just soaking up the quiet moments between us. He pulled out this battered copy of Rilke poems and held it up like a prize trophy. "Ever read this guy?" he asked, eyes twinkling. "Only the ones I pretended to understand in high school," I admitted. He laughed. "Same here, but there's something about poetry that gets under your skin, you know? Like it knows things you can't say out loud." I nodded, feeling that too. We settled into a little nook with our books, sitting close enough that our shoulders touched, but neither of us said anything about it. It just felt normal, comfortable. After a while, Jake looked up and caught me staring. "You okay?" I blinked, caught off guard. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" I shrugged, unsure how to put it into words. "About us, I guess. How weird and amazing this all is." He smiled softly, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "Yeah, me too." That simple gesture sent this warmth through me that I hadn't expected, and I found myself wishing the moment could last forever. But of course, life being life, the quiet days didn't last. A few weeks later, we hit a rough patch. Nothing dramatic, just that familiar fear creeping in, the one that whispers, "Is this really gonna work?" Jake was stressed about finals and band stuff, and I was overwhelmed with job applications and family drama I hadn't told him about yet. One night, after a particularly tense phone call with my dad, I got quiet and withdrawn. Jake noticed, tried to ask what was up, but I brushed him off, thinking I could handle it alone. That didn't go well. The next day, he cornered me near the coffee shop, eyes serious. "Hey, whatever's going on, I want to be there for you. You don't have to carry it all by yourself." I wanted to tell him everything, but the words felt heavy and sticky in my throat. Instead, I just nodded, barely meeting his gaze. He sighed, then gave me one of those rare looks that said he wasn't going anywhere. "Whenever you're ready, okay?" no pressure. That moment was a turning point. I realized how much I needed him, not just for the easy laughs or quiet evenings, but for the messy, hard stuff too. So I started opening up, bit by bit, sharing the things I'd kept locked away. Jake listened without judgment, holding my hand through the tears and the rants, reminding me that vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was hard, but also kind of beautiful. Things smoothed out after that, and our connection felt deeper, more real. We weren't just two guys caught in a snowstorm anymore. We were two people choosing each other every day, storm or no. One evening, a few weeks before the semester ended, Jake surprised me with tickets to a tiny concert at a local jazz club. He'd been working on something special with his band, and he wanted me to be the first to see it. The place was smoky and intimate, with low lights and a crowd that swayed to the music. Watching Jake up on stage, guitar in hand, was like seeing him come alive in a way that left me breathless. His fingers moved with confidence, the music flowing through him like electricity. After the show, we slipped out to the balcony, the cool night air a sharp contrast to the warmth inside. Jake pulled me close, his breath visible in the crisp air. I've been meaning to ask, how do you feel about us? I blinked, heart pounding. It felt like the right question, even though it scared the hell out of me. I feel lucky, I admitted. Like I never expected any of this, but I want to see where it goes. He smiled, that same soft smile that had gotten me from the start. Me too. We stood there for a long moment, fingers intertwined, the city lights flickering below us. The future felt uncertain, but for once, that didn't terrify me. Because whatever came next, it was ours to figure out, together, and honestly, I couldn't wait. After that night on the balcony, everything felt charged in a way that was almost electric, but also comforting. Like, we'd acknowledged the unspoken things between us, and were stepping into this whole new territory, hand in hand, but still figuring out what it even meant. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Jake. Coffee later? Need to talk about something. I wasn't sure if it was nerves or excitement, but I replied with a quick absolutely. When we met up at our usual campus cafe, Jake had that slightly serious look on his face, the one that made me stop mid-sip and actually pay attention. He pulled out a crumpled flyer from his backpack, sliding it across the table. Okay, so my band got invited to play a small festival downtown next month. It's kind of a big deal for us. But here's the thing. Traveling means we'd have to figure out the whole, long distance thing. I blinked, heart flipping in my chest. Long distance? Just the words felt heavy. Like suddenly the space between us wasn't just about physical distance, but all the unknowns that come with it. I mean, Jake continued, eyes searching mine. I don't want to mess up what we have, but I also don't want to miss this chance. I guess I'm just trying to figure out how we make it work. That hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to be supportive, to say of course we can handle it. But the truth was, I was scared. Scared of losing the closeness we'd built, scared of the silence that distance could bring. I took a deep breath. I'm proud of you, Jake. You should go for it, and we'll figure out the rest, one step at a time. He smiled, relief washing over his face. Thanks. That means a lot. We spent the afternoon talking through what this might look like. Calls, visits during breaks, being honest about the hard days. It wasn't easy, but it felt real. For once, we weren't pretending everything would be perfect. We were just promising to try. The festival came quicker than I expected. Jake left with his band in the early morning, a flurry of goodbyes and last-minute packing. Watching him walk away, guitar case slung over his shoulder, I felt this strange mix of pride and loneliness. Those first few weeks apart were rough. Texting helped, sure, but there were moments when the silence stretched too long, and I caught myself questioning if this was something that could really last. One night, I was sitting in my dorm, scrolling through my phone when a video popped up, Jake playing a new song he'd written. His voice was raw, full of longing and hope, and suddenly all the distance felt a little more bearable. I called him immediately after, and we talked for hours about music, future plans, the small things we missed about each other. That night reminded me why I was holding on. Months passed, and we found our rhythm. Imperfect, but ours. We sent care packages, shared playlists, and celebrated each other's wins and bad days from afar. When winter break rolled around, Jake came back, and those weeks felt like a breath of fresh air, like no time had passed at all. One evening, curled up on the couch in his apartment, I looked at him and realized how much I'd grown to depend on him. The way his smile could brighten the darkest days, the comfort of his hand in mine, the quiet moments where words weren't needed. "Hey," he said softly, tracing circles on my arm. "Yeah? I'm thinking after graduation, maybe we don't have to do the long-distance thing anymore." My heart skipped. "You mean stay?" Jake nodded, eyes serious. "Yeah, I want to build something with you. Not just weekend visits, but real-life stuff." I felt this rush of hope and fear all at once. It wasn't easy. Nothing worth it ever is, but knowing we wanted the same thing made it feel possible. "I'd like that," I whispered. And right then, with the city lights twinkling outside and his hand warm in mine, I knew that Snowstorm night was just the beginning of a story that was still unfolding. Messy, unpredictable, but ours. No matter where the road took us, we'd face it together. Graduation day was a blur of congratulations and hugs, but amidst all the noise, it was Jake's smile that stood out the most. We'd made it through the year, through the distance, the uncertainty, the late-night calls, and now we were here, at this new beginning. Later that evening, we found ourselves back on that same campus, the place where it all started, only now it felt different, less like a backdrop and more like a chapter we'd written together. We wandered to the library steps, the sky heavy with the kind of quiet that follows a long day, and Jake slipped his hand into mine. No grand speeches, no dramatic declarations, just the simple comfort of being there with someone who mattered. "I was thinking about that snowstorm night," I said softly, "and how weird it is that being stuck inside ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me." He chuckled, squeezing my hand. "Yeah, who knew being trapped with a complete stranger could turn into this?" I smiled, feeling the warmth spread through me. "Not just a stranger anymore." Jake glanced at me, eyes full of something I couldn't quite name but recognized instantly. "Nope, definitely not." We stood there for a moment, letting the silence speak for us, the way it had so many times before, filled with everything words couldn't capture. As we started walking back, I realized that life wasn't about perfect plans or fairy tale moments. It was about the messy, unexpected connections we made, and choosing to hold on to them, come what may. And with Jake by my side, I felt ready for whatever came next. Because sometimes, being caught in a storm isn't about the cold or the fear. It's about finding someone who makes you feel warm, safe, and seen. That night, under a sky dusted with stars and the quiet hum of a sleeping campus, I knew that no matter where life took us, this was home.